You're the host.
Yes.
And you got a lot of friends. Your Bhakti Vriksha group members are here, or they're on their way?
We have different ones.
There's some are here, some are here. Some are here.
Some are here and some are on their way. Okay. Well, I was thinking that a topic I could speak on this evening is continuing where I left off before coming here in St. Louis. We're discussing the passing of Grandfather Bhīṣma. How's that? Canto 1, Chapter 9. And we covered 4 sessions, that now just beginning 23, 24, 25. So before 23, do a quick summary. The first 7, 8 verses of Grandfather Bhīṣma's passing comes right after Queen Kunti's prayers. And the sequence of the chapters is not chronological because Grandfather Bhīṣma's passing takes place before Queen Kunti's prayers. So the Bhagavatam is not organized chronologically but transcendentally logically by subject matter. One leads to another, leads to another. And a very big part, this gentleman needs a place to sit. Come have a seat. Yeah. You gotta put up with these big pillows though.
No, they're very long.
If you're not comfortable with the pillows, okay, you're comfortable. Okay, fine. A big part of both of the prayers, Queen Kunti's prayers and Grandfather Bhīṣma's, the whole chapter, is both of them are disclosing truths about Krishna. Both of them are highly qualified devotees of the Lord. And particularly Kunti is embarrassingly humble about what she says about herself, what she doesn't know, what she doesn't understand, but what she does understand is way above everybody else because of her devotion. Truths about Krishna revealed to her because of her devotion to Krishna. And she shared those truths about Krishna in the prayers. And one of the concluding portions of her prayers is a prayer that let her mind, like the Ganges, flows down to the sea without stopping. Let my mind similarly flow always to you. And we're going to hear in the little prayers that section of Bhīṣma's praying to Krishna after the chapter gets started. And he's essentially saying the same. And he's, in the previous verses, he's spoken truths about Krishna that are in the true sense of the word, transcendental, meaning they're beyond the capacity of the senses and beyond the capacity of the mind to know. By speculative process, it's not possible to know. And even by careful study of the scripture, it's not possible to know. It's too confusing. But by devotion, he's understanding truth about Krishna and just expressing them. So the chapter begins, chapter 9 begins, after the Kurukshetra battle has been completed. Yudhisthira is installed as the emperor. He's rightfully situated like that. The funeral for the deceased soldiers on the battlefield, and that's a lot of soldiers. All the funerals have been performed. And grandfather Bhīṣma is lying on the bed of arrows. Here she is. Okay. A pure devotee has just entered our midst. Now seated on the throne to rule the world. Many people would be happy to be the emperor of the world. Maybe even an emperor of a country, maybe even emperor of a part of a country, but he's the emperor of the world. And he's feeling despondent. And his despondency is because some of the same reasons that Arjuna was reluctant in chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita to fight. Because essentially so many persons lost their lives. For what? So I can become king? Horrible. He's feeling horrible. And it's not in this chapter 9, but in Mahabharata, Krishna comes and tries to pacify Yudhisthira. And Krishna can't pacify Yudhisthira. He continues to be despondent. So a decision is made to go see grandfather Bhīṣma. And accompanying Yudhisthira, there's this big long list, a who's who list of amazing personalities. Parshuram, Vyasadeva, Shukadeva Goswami, Vishishta, Asita, Devala, and a whole, and all of their followers, Gautama, and this one, and that one. So they're going for two reasons: to hear grandfather Bhīṣma, because they look up to him, just because of his age, but he, of course, in that assembly there's two others at least, Sukadeva and Vyas, who are Mahajans, great authorities amongst all the authorities of the whole history of the world. But they look up to grandfather Bhīṣma. They want to hear grandfather Bhīṣma speak. And the other is they want to be present to create auspiciousness on the occasion of grandfather Bhīṣma's passing. Those two reasons. So they come. Several verses describing the who's who. And then when they reach there, grandfather Bhīṣma is incapacitated. He can't move. But he's so expert that he knows how to receive guests, and they're fully satisfied. Imagine, you don't even get up. Offer them some water and a place to sit. You can't do anything. But they're fully satisfied because of his spiritual culture. So he sees Krishna, because Krishna, following Yudhisthira was Krishna, because Krishna likes to follow. his devotee. Devotees like to follow Krishna, but Krishna likes to follow these certain devotees because that gives him more pleasure than being followed. When he sees Krishna, he worships Krishna. Doesn't give the detail, but devotionally he worships Krishna. And he sees in the face of Yudhisthira and the Pandavas how sad they look. And then he begins his speaking. So there's a series of messages. Those series of messages include, he's the one that's in this most horrible suffering condition, and he speaks instead out of compassion for the suffering of Yudhisthira and the Pandavas and Queen Kunti. He's not focused on his own. Who can imagine how much pain? You stub your toe, how much does it hurt? Or you get a little bee sting, or a pinprick, or a little something, an insect is biting you. And his body is riddled with arrows through and through. How much pain? But he's completely above it. Instead, he's thinking about the suffering of the Pandavas. So he goes into describing how many tribulations they have undergone, the degree of tribulation that they underwent. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to live. But each time the tribulation came and Krishna came and saved them, because Krishna is their protector. And he speaks this important message that says, these aren't verbatim his words, but he gives three principles, and he speaks it again in the second, Prabhupada speaks again in the second purport. If one lives one's life by theistic conduct, and if that theistic conduct that you perform is under guidance of qualified Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and when doing so, your intention is for pleasing the Supreme Person, then there's nothing to lament. Now, you don't score well in those three areas, then you can make some correction. But the plan of the Supreme Lord, how things have turned out, the way that things have turned out, that's in Krishna's hands. So what do we examine? Not how things come out. We examine those three things: theistic conduct, proper guidance, trying to please Krishna. That's our course correction, not the outcome. But the course correction is the consciousness and the manner in which we're carrying out our duties. Then he goes through this whole thing, several verses in a row. It says, therefore, this is all the result of inevitable time. And time is a fascinating topic. He doesn't drill too far down on it, just repeats it thematically, that the plan of the Lord, moved by time, is inexplicable, is inconceivable, it's unstoppable, inexorable, and going way back. You had some reservation. He doesn't say like this, but Yudhisthira had reservation. But Krishna wanted. So you did because Krishna wanted. You didn't do because you wanted to become emperor. You did because Krishna wanted. And why did he want it this way? No one knows. Great sages, he lists the different people that have tried to understand, the different methods that they've used to try to understand. And it's all incomplete, no one can understand. Then he says, to some degree, Lord Shiva and Narada, to some degree they understand because Krishna reveals to them things that he doesn't reveal to everybody. To some degree they can understand. But they can understand the conduct, but they can't understand the motivation, the intention behind the conduct. He can't understand that. So Yudhisthira, don't try to understand. Rather, just accept. There's a plan, voila. The plan is now happening. And Krishna wanted you to rule the world. Now there's so many people, the citizens, they're wanting a ruler to protect them. So Yudhisthira, perform your duty. Do what Krishna wanted you to do, give protection. Now there's lots of explanation in the purports on these points, but these are his main points. And because it's coming from grandfather Bhīṣma, Yudhisthira becomes pacified. Now, there's several practical things. Krishna has just demonstrated something I can't do, Bhīṣma can do. He's better than me. He's not better than Krishna, but Krishna wanted. And Bhīṣma took the side against the Pandavas and against principles, apparently, against these certain principles of Dharma, that is, the firstborn son is to become the king. Everyone knows that. And Bhīṣma fought on the side of those who weren't the firstborn king. Now, so why did he do that? Maybe he's bad. But he's not bad. Because Krishna wanted to show how exalted. And we're going to hear just now, his coming before grandfather Bhīṣma is a sign that Krishna was pleased with Bhīṣma. Just like you, the Pandavas, you see him this way, that way, the other way, by family circumstance. He's your cousin brother, he's your dear friend, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's the soul of all souls, he's the source of everything, he's beyond this material world, that's who he is. And he's in this relationship with you by his intimacy of love, and in a similar manner he's come before me. So that as I leave this world, leave this body, and leave the world, I'm seeing Krishna, thinking of Krishna, and seeing Krishna, and remembering Krishna, and you go to Krishna. Now, his whole life was like that anyway, whether he was seeing Krishna or having conversation with Krishna. His consciousness was perfected soul. So in other words, his destination was Vaikuntha, whether Krishna came to the battlefield and stood before him or not, because of his consciousness. But Krishna is showing special kindness to him. So that's the section, that's where we ended. I'll even read verse 22, then we'll read 23, 24, 25. Very nice section. Yeah, text 22. Bhīṣma is saying, he's all these assembled luminaries, great personalities, they're all hearing him speak. Text 21. Being the absolute personality of Godhead, he is present in everyone's heart. He is equally kind to everyone, and he is free from the false ego of differentiation. Therefore, whatever he does is free from material inebriety. He is equal balanced. Vishmadeva sees Krishna in his Narayana feature. That's his relationship. So, or a SuperSoul. He says it correctly. He, the absolute personality, is present in everyone's heart. So here he is, right before me, but he is the SuperSoul in everyone's heart. He's a preparatory SuperSoul. That's who he is. Yet, despite his being equally kind to everyone, he has graciously come before me while I'm ending my life, for I am his unflinching servitor. Now, a relationship between, that's the last verse from the discussion that I ended in St. Louis. Samaham sarvabhusheshu na me dveshosti na priyaha. That's a verse from Bhagavad Gita, first part. Samoham sarvabhuteshu na me dveshosti na priyaha. He's equal to everyone. Samoham. I am equal to everyone. And what is the rest of the verse? But
Samoham sarvabhuteshu na me dveshosti na priyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham.
So for those who are his devotees, he sees them as his dear friend. They see him in that way too. So that, like, impartial and then partial. So the partiality appears partial because from the side of the devotee, when they approach Krishna with love, he reciprocates with love. When they see him in this mood of neutrality, he sees them in the mood of neutrality. He reciprocates as we regard him. And even those who are inimical towards him, he remains equal anyway. But those who are his devotee, he reciprocates with that devotion that they have. And therefore, the text 22, he's saying, therefore, he's come before me while I'm ending my life, for I am his unflinching servitor. Now, how does one get there? It's so the Bhagavatam is just taking the message of Bhagavad Gita and expanding it. It's the graduate study of the undergraduate study. So now how do you get there? Same as in chapter 14. Krishna describes all living entities are under the influence of the modes of nature. However, there's some very, very rare, unique, special souls that are free from the modes of nature. So the natural question Arjuna wants to know is, how do you distinguish? What are their characteristics? And most importantly, how do you get there? So that's this next verse. Text 23. The personality of Godhead, who appears in the mind of the devotee by attentive devotion and meditation and by chanting of the holy name, releases the devotee from the bondage of fruitive activities at the time of quitting the material body. In fact, we're released from the bondage of fruitive activities before then. But tendency is very strong. Residual tendency, even if one is released, the residual tendency is very strong. But it's SuperSoul, it's Krishna who releases one from that. It's a verse of Bhagavad Gita, one of the four essential verses of Bhagavad Gita. Aham agyanajam tamaha. Krishna from Jnanadipena Bhāsvata. With the torchlight of knowledge, he frees one from the darkness born of ignorance. The darkness, born of ignorance, the darkness is material conception of life. The tendency to seek happiness through fruitive activities. Krishna says he removes that unto those who are constantly engaged in my devotional service. So that's the same as being said here by Bhīṣmadeva. And in the purport, I'm not going to read the purport, Prabhupada discusses the yogi and the stage of Samadhi, because Grandfather Bhīṣma is, although he's interacting externally, that is, his senses are going out, at the right moment he has the capacity by will to withdraw his power of sense and consolidate within. That's what yogis do. Pratyahara. Meanwhile, he's engaged in devotional service, giving some solace to Yudhisthira, giving some praise to Krishna, giving some bandha gyan about Krishna's position, Krishna Tattva. He's Grandfather Bhīṣma. He's doing the Grandfather Bhīṣma show. But he's giving us this understanding that how you come to that stage is, during this lifetime you cultivate that. Attentive devotion and meditation. So that's Bhakti is both something you do externally and something you do internally. Jiva Goswami explains this without all the technical Sanskrit terminology. There's an active aspect and there's a non-active aspect of bhakti. And the active is what you do with your senses, what you do with your mind, and the not active is the sense of devotion from the heart. The unmoving disposition of heart, the regard, and that's Grandfather Bhīṣma. Whether he's on the battlefield, or whether he's giving teachings to the children, or the young Pandava boys. Here he's on the battlefield with a whole assembly of great sages. Those are the active parts, and then there's this unflinching devotion that doesn't move. This part moves and that part doesn't move. The part that moves rests upon the part that doesn't move. He's a pure devotee. And one who by engaging in the external, the moving parts, attentive devotion and meditation, and by chanting of the holy name, really specifically, kirtayan, nama kirtayan, right in the verse. Grandfather Krishna, it's not Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Kali Yuga, but it's the Bhagavatam's teaching, nama kirtayan. Brings one to that position where attention becomes focused, mind doesn't move. By cleansing process, it becomes possible. But it requires some cultivation. That's the sadhana part. And then in the mature stage is the fixed part. So that's what Grandfather Bhīṣma is in. He's in the fixed part, fixed stage. And at the time of quitting the body, fruitive activity is gone. Even the tendency, residual tendency, is gone. But it takes some cultivation, because otherwise tendency may be not active, and then again it becomes active, and then it becomes not active. It becomes overwhelmed by devotion, that's nice, and then it becomes active again. he's describing a very elevated stage of devotion. In the purport, Prabhupada is speaking about the chapter 6, the verses on Samadhi, the Samadhi of a yogi. In material existence, the living being has to endure the material conditions of threefold miseries life after life according to his fruitive work. Such material life is produced by material desires only. Devotional service to the Lord does not kill the natural desires of the living being, but they are applied in the right cause of devotional service. This qualifies the desire to be transferred to the spiritual sky. General Bhīṣmadeva is referring to a particular type of yoga called Bhakti Yoga. And he was fortunate enough to have the Lord directly in his presence before he quitted his material body. Therefore, he desired that the Lord stay before his view in the following verses. So, the next two verses we'll discuss. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains like this. There was a mantra, doesn't say which mantra, though there was a mantra that he would regularly recite, and that mantra was a mantra of form Vishnu. And so what he's going to speak now is the deity of his mantra. Yeah. May my Lord, who is four-handed and whose beautifully decorated lotus face with eyes as red as the rising sun is smiling, kindly await me at that moment when I quit this material body. I'll read a little bit from the purport. Here, Grandfather Bhīṣma says, as long as I do not quit this body. This means that the great general would quit the body by his own will. He was not being forced by the laws of nature. He was so powerful that he could stay in his body as long as he desired. He got that benediction from his father. He desired that the Lord stay before him in his four-ended Narayana feature so that he might concentrate upon him and thus be entranced in that meditation. Then his mind might be satisfied, sanctified with thinking of the Lord. Thus he did not mind wherever he might go. He goes on to a pure devotee goes wherever Krishna wants them to go. What they want is that they're with Krishna, and that with Krishna means Krishna consciousness. And when you're in Krishna consciousness, you're with Krishna, wherever you may be. So high, low, somewhere in between. Just by constant remembrance of Krishna, you're with Krishna. Krishna in mind. Krishna is there personally. The only desire that a pure devotee entertains is that he always may be in rapt attention with thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord regardless. Bhīṣmadeva wanted this much only, that his mind be absorbed in thinking of the Lord and that he pass away thus. That is the highest ambition of a pure devotee. Again, Vishwanath says, this is his humility. He was already a Vaikuntha bound soul. But he's naturally appealing to the mercy and compassionate nature of the Lord to be with him so that he can make that transition smoothly, properly, without any problems. And that's part of his qualification to be Vaikuntha bound. This connect with that, and that connect with this. It's the nature of a pure devotee. That sense of hankering for unflinching devotion, and in that way be with the Lord in whatever circumstance he wants. Now that's high, but that's Grandfather Bhīṣma's position. And now the last verse for this evening. Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Yudhisthira, after hearing Bhīṣmadeva speak in that appealing tone, asked him in the presence of all the great rishis about the essential principles of various religious duties. Now, what it means here is that Bhīṣmadeva, the purpose was fulfilled. Going back to the beginning of the chapter, Bhīṣmadeva was in this big distress, despondency, couldn't get over it. He's over it. Bhīṣmadeva said, Krishna wants, you should rule, give protection to the citizens, he's ready. And then the next is, if I'm supposed to give protection and instructions to the citizens, and rule the citizens, then I need to know how to do that. So can you give me instructions how to rule as the emperor? And our acharyas say, you shouldn't have asked like that. It's not the proper time to ask somebody to give a Bhagavatam class when they're lying on a bed of arrows. But it was to honor Grandfather Bhīṣma, prompted by Krishna to honor Grandfather Bhīṣma, have Grandfather Bhīṣma speak these truths, and all the great sages hear him speak so wonderfully. It was just to honor Grandfather Bhīṣma at the time of his passing. So he continues tomorrow. He continues going into engaging his senses in the service of the master of the senses. And when the right time comes, he withdraws his senses, the power of sense, and consolidates everything upon Krishna. So when he's doing this part, his consciousness is upon Krishna. In other words, that's what we're to be cultivating also. While we're doing what we're doing, the active part, the part that's not active, needs to be nourished. And how do we nourish that? Primarily through Shravanam Kirtanam. It's the Bhagavad Dharma process. By hearing and chanting. Hearing and chanting. And the earlier part of Canto 1, Chapter 2 tells us this is Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. It's to be done eternally or regularly. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati. So back to the question, how does this arise? Bhaktir Bhavati, it becomes manifest. Bhakti means I want to be engaged in Krishna's service. So there's the active part, what the senses do. There's the mind, that's an active part also. Our convictions, our values, that's an active part. It's a little more subtle. But then the deepest held principles that we live by, unchanging by circumstance, that's to be nourished by the hearing and chanting process. That's a core part of bhakti. Say negatively, bhakti isn't just something you do. It isn't just a behavior. It's a behavior. But more importantly, it's the consciousness behind the behavior. Because if the consciousness behind the behavior is not strong, the behavior can start to drift. Not only can, commonly it does. But if it's fixed, and if that's the way that we're practicing our hearing and chanting is to have that become fixed, it becomes fixed. It may take a while, but it becomes fixed. And then when that fixed happens, then there's this rapt attention. And when there's rapt attention, Krishna reciprocates. He sees, oh, they really want me. And he reciprocates when he sees, oh, they really want me. There's lessons within these pages of the Bhagavatam that the story is nice. I mean, it's grandfather Bhīṣma, great warrior, one of the 8 Vasus, defeated, or at least Parshuram couldn't defeat him. How powerful was grandfather Bhīṣma? How virtuous was it? And he's now leaving the world and he's giving wonderful teachings as he's departing from this world. There's a little video recording. You know, some of you perhaps have seen the memories, Prabhupada memories, like recordings of devotees that had interaction with Prabhupada. We're going to be showing just a little 3-minute, 2.5-minute video clip of Govinda dossier, I believe it is, saying when Prabhupada had his heart attack, and some devotees were with him in the New Jersey shore. This is not the ones on the boat, but after he was in America for some time. So they took him to a place to convalesce. And even his, you know, I haven't had a heart attack, but I've heard it's very painful. And things don't work the way that they're supposed to work. But even in that condition, they had the devotees come in the room. He had the devotees come in the room, prop him up on pillows, and speak the Bhagavatam. There was just 3 people in the room. Because that was him. It wasn't about, you know, I'm uncomfortable and I need. He just was giving and 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 just. Very special. And grandfather Vishwa is the Bhagavatam version of that. Bed of Arrows giving starting tomorrow evening, giving some discussions about Varnashram. Education, ruling the kingdom, guiding people according to Varna and Ashram. About to leave the world. But all the while that service to the Pandavas, the dear sons of Pandu, it's for the welfare of the world. And when the right time comes, off he goes. Fixing his mind, we'll see how he fixes his mind on Krishna. So for us, it's the proper hearing and chanting. That's the preparatory stage. And I've been thinking this a lot lately and saying it sometimes. I have this sense that we've been all at this for a long time. You know, how many lifetimes have each one of us been through this. Probably a lot of lifetimes. Maybe there's some exceptions, but probably a lot of lifetimes. And here we are again. And we have the opportunity, the gift that the Bhagavatam wants to give and that Prabhupada wanted us to receive through the Bhagavatam, Lord Chaitanya, is finish up your business. So the goal of unflinching devotion is a very high goal. But it's something, if we don't achieve it, we'll come back again and it's not fun. So this is the message that says we desire to go back to Godhead. We just read the nice section. Exalted devotees don't care whether they go back to Godhead or not. But we're not such exalted devotees. Going through the whole thing all over again. And here we are again. And whatever our stage is. So at least, a very serious effort to go some steps, if not the whole way. So that means taking shelter of the message and letting go of some of the attachment of the temporary. Not necessarily trashing things, but letting go of the attachment to those things. And instead, the consciousness behind those things is so important. It's nice sounding, and then it takes some effort to cultivate it. But the main cultivation effort is our hearing and chanting, done very carefully, every day. Very carefully hearing and chanting every day. And it's like, just before here, it was a long flight. It was from Phoenix, Arizona. And it's very hot in Phoenix, Arizona. And by the temple, someone planted a banyan tree. Now, I was under the impression that banyan trees grow very slowly. So they planted a little baby banyan tree by the parking lot. And this banyan tree is growing like it's Jack and the Beanstalk. Growing and growing and growing and growing. It's going to take over the parking lot. I don't know what they're going to do. Then people go there and they worship the banyan tree. They have their little altar and Ganeshji and the whole thing. Om Jai Jagadisha Hare. But so the banyan tree is growing. I imagine people water the banyan tree. I haven't seen them do it, but Arizona's a desert. But it's growing so fast. So one devotee that was there, one of the pujaris, says they have a banyan tree also in New Orleans, or at the farm, I guess. And it doesn't grow so fast. But the dry climate, plus people worshipping and watering at regular intervals, it's growing very quickly. So also the creeper of bhakti can grow and grow and grow. The watering process is the hearing and chanting. And we can't hear and chant too much. For plants, you can get, like Tulsi. I learned this from a Tulsi Pujari. You can get root rot if you water Tulsi too much. Does anybody know about that? Tulsi worshippers? So some, but not too much. Not too little, not too much. I don't know enough about what's just right. But with hearing and chanting, it's never too much. But what's really wanted is something that's sustainable, something you do every day, every day, every day. Nityam bhagavata sevaya. Bhagavati uttama shloke, bhaktir bhavati. Naishtikya becomes an irrevocable fact. So any discussion? My Father Bhīṣma. Portable microphone.
So what did Bhīṣma said to Yudhishthira?
He said many things. I said some of the things that he said. But basically, he said, this is Krishna's plan. You don't understand it. Nobody understands it. But it's Krishna's plan. He wanted you to become the emperor. He wanted Duryodhana to not be the emperor. And you're the emperor. Act according to Krishna's will. The citizens are waiting. They want someone to rule and protect them. Rule and protect them, lead them. Then comes, okay, what do I do to lead them? But he pacified his heart, saying, wasn't there was the positive and the negative. You didn't act against theistic conduct. These three things. You followed the instructions of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and you acted only for the pleasure of Krishna. The outcome you're unhappy about, but the outcome, that's in Krishna's hand. The outcome is he wants you to be the king. Now be the king. No, how does that apply to us? Events take place in our lives that are, surprising sometimes, and disappointing sometimes, and sad sometimes, and so forth. But the outcome, that's in Krishna's hand. We need to take a very careful look now, and then moment to moment going forward. Those three things. That's the instruction for us. He has a question.
Hare Krishna. The non-active part you mentioned, cultivating non-active part through Sravana, Kirtanam, chanting and hearing. Could you share more on how to cultivate it? Is it just...
And that's not how to. It's just the hearing and chanting done attentively and without offense. That's the how to. That's the whole, elaborate, but that's like a japa retreat. That's the principle. Attentively, regularly, with devotion. And we have a little devotion. With whatever little devotion we have, we do it every day. Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. In the association of devotees, ideally, we cultivate like that. Combined with the other activities, deity worship. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Not trying to understand the plan of the Lord, but at the same time have to take some action when some things are happening in life. So is it that I presume something, this may be the indication of the Lord, and then act that way? Or...
Say it again. I don't understand what you're suggesting. Say it again.
Don't try to understand what's the plan of the Lord. That was the instruction that I heard from Bhīṣmadeva. But when some things are happening in life and I have to take some action, which direction to take action requires some kind of assumption,
requires some kind of what?
Assumption, or how do I know what is Krishna trying to teach me?
Well, you may not know, but it doesn't mean you can't do any act unless you know the intention of what Krishna is trying to teach you. You may not know that. You may discover it by proper action. From your side, from our side, we want to please Krishna, so we have Guru Sadhu Shastra to look at, to what will please Krishna. There's Chaita Guru, so to some degree we're guided by, but SuperSoul within. But then that has its filters, the modes of nature and our conceptions of life are filtering how we see Guru Sadhu Shastra and instruction from within. It's part of conditioned life, even for nice devotees. Still, you have to take some decision, and that the guideline is Guru Sadhu Shastra. So wanting to stay in fidelity with Guru Sadhu Shastra, that's the operative principle. And then there's course correction as you go along. Just don't become complacent and think, I'm there, I don't need to do that anymore. It's an ongoing refinement, realignment, further purification process, practically indefinitely. Guru Sadhu Shastra. Yeah.
What's the relevance?
What's the relevance?
What's the relevance of Bhīṣmadeva's departure is so important in Bhagavatam? Why it is so much emphasized? There's all the great devotees and Supreme Lord.
But he's a great soul. Whenever there's a great personality who's departing, so the elevated persons want to be there to bring further, what's the right word? Auspiciousness, create an atmosphere of auspiciousness collectively by their presence. In that auspicious circumstance, the departure of the soul is made more favorable. Or when there's any function, bringing advanced souls present, making the occasion more auspicious. Yeah. So they wanted to be there for him, to create that atmosphere of auspiciousness for his departure. Okay? Behind you? Yeah.
Yeah, so Bhīṣmadeva he was lying on the arrows, and him being such a great devotee of Krishna, why did he have to suffer that?
There's a lot of discussion about that in the previous section. So you can go back if you want, you can read. Prabhupada discusses it elaborately. Sometimes it's like that and sometimes it's not like that. Like with Prahlad, he was protected. Jiva Goswami says, with Maharaj Parikshit, the snake bird came and bit him. Now, Krishna protected Prahlad, the snake bird came and bit Maharaj Parikshit. So sometimes this doesn't happen, and sometimes it happens. And when that sometimes it happens, in part it shows the unflinching consciousness of that devotee And that, due to that unflinching consciousness of that devotee, Shukadeva Goswami went straight to Krishna. The express route, instead of, it didn't happen. For Prahlad, he had to rule for 60,000 years. And more restricted, he went back to Godhead. And he was undisturbed when here comes the snake bird. He remained undisturbed. Showing his prowess in another way. Besides the prowess of the Lord's going to stop this snake bird from coming to get me. It shows his prowess in another way. And so the devotee will do those things, or the Lord will engage with the devotee in those ways to show the glory of the devotee. There's sometimes it's in between, like Bali Maharaj was bound like a criminal. And then the Lord became his gatekeeper. So it looked like punishment, and then it looked like honor. But it was actually honor. He wanted to show the world, just see how great is Bali. So this is the message of the plan of the Lord is inexplicable. So why did he do it that way with Grandfather Bhīṣma and he did differently with somebody else? It's honoring his devotee's greatness in a particular way. In the case of Grandfather Bhīṣma had a desire. Grandfather Bhīṣma is a wonderful personality to consider. His rasa, he was a Vaikunthavasi, and his rasa with Krishna was dasya ras. And yet he took the side against the Pandavas. He took a vow that he would kill Arjuna, Krishna's dearmost friend. He was firing arrows. How's that a servant? Firing arrows at Arjuna, hitting the body of Krishna, and Krishna enjoying it. And when Grandfather Bhīṣma is leaving the world, after he does this, withdrawing his senses and everything, the image in his mind is Krishna charging him with the broken wheel of Arjuna raised, and dust from the hooves of the horses on his ashen face, perspiration streaming down his cheeks, blood on his chest, the upper garment streaming behind him, ready to smash him. That's his meditation. Dasiras. He's reciprocating. Krishna's reciprocating with Grandfather Bhīṣma. In a way that looks like misery, suffering. For us, it certainly would be. For Grandfather Bhīṣma, it was wonderful. There's a question over here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
A devotee who got moksha and he got moksha and he's in the devotee is in Krishna Loka. What is that thing that makes that person to break away from the Krishna Loka? Or if that is happened, can you just explain some story that happened?
Nope. You and me. But, the fall of the jiva question is what you're asking. And Prabhupada's explanation is somehow or other. Yadrich chaya. somehow or other. Inexplicable. But the explanation is, the inexplicable explanation is, misuse of free will. And it defies reason, but misuse of free will.
So, I have one other question.
Sure.
Let us take a kalpanta. In that kalpanta, the devotee who got moksha will be created back again and put back into the other lokas again?
No.
Even in the kalpanta?
Even. Punarjanma na. Anyone else?
Actually, my question got answered, part of it, where you're speaking of Bhīṣmadeva's rasa, how he was seeing Krishna's charging him. I was just wanting to hear more glory of Bhīṣmadeva. He was being a pure devotee, his rasa is so intimate relation with Krishna, but still while leaving his body, he wanted to see the 400 form of Krishna. As you were saying, Vishwadeva was Vaikuntavas. Is that the reason, or?
Well, that's not the reason. Well, there's different explanations. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes in his commentary, he speaks like this because, it's the four-handed form, because that was the mantra that he chanted. Now, what was that mantra he chanted, he doesn't say. But that was the mantra of his meditation or his chanting. And so that's the vision that he sees. Krishna exhibits according to the devotion of his devotee. He exhibits that feature of himself. Now one could say, well, he's Vaikunthavasi, so that's how he sees Krishna, Narayana. In an earlier verse, Bhīṣma says, he is the original Narayana. And then Prabhupada goes through this whole long explanation. What does that mean? It means that Narayana, Vaikuntha, is expanded from Krishna. Swami Bhagavan Krishna is the original source of everything, including the features of Narayana. So the original Narayana. In that sense, because how many Vaikuntha planets are innumerable? Which amongst them is the original? Swami Bhagavan Krishna is the original. So Bhīṣma understands that. The Bhagavatam is having him disclose that, or through the Bhagavatam he's disclosing that. Yet he has a particular affinity of devotion. Okay. Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.